caught my husband sneaking off with his flirty co-worker, so I teamed up with her husband for the ultimate revenge that ruined their lives instantly. I, 36 female, have been married to my husband, 37 male, for over 10 years now. We used to be a happy couple, but over the years we just grew apart, I guess. Things haven't been good between us for a really long time now, and even though we tried to make it work, it didn't help, and we just gave up at some point. We even tried for a baby in our early 30s because we thought maybe a child would help us fix our relationship, but we struggled a lot while trying to conceive. And after spending thousands of dollars on IVF treatments and doctors, we gave up on any hope for a baby as well. That led to a lot of bitterness and resentment between us, and things haven't been the same ever since. For the last couple of years, we've been living together like roommates. I don't think either of us has been happy for a long time in this marriage, but we've just been too afraid to admit it. So we continued to live the way we were used to. But the one thing that I didn't do was cheat. No matter how bad it was, I think loyalty is just the bare minimum to ask of your partner, but I guess some people can't even give you that. My husband, unfortunately, turned out to be one of those people. My husband's boss hosted a huge party at his place on New Year's Eve a few days ago. My husband and a few of his CO workers were invited too. I wanted to spend the day at home, let loose with some wine and television, but I decided to accompany him to the party. He didn't seem to care whether I came along with him or not, but I thought it'd be weird if he went to his boss's house all by himself when this was the first time that he'd been invited by him. It was a pretty big deal for him, and in spite of our situation, I wanted to be there for him, so I went with him. Once we got there, he spent most of his time talking to one of his KO workers. I'll call her Natalie, 29, female. I knew for a fact that Natalie had a crush on him. A few days back, I caught my husband chuckling at his phone and hadn't been able to resist the urge to ask him what he was laughing about. He told me that he was texting a young coworker about some work, and she was trying to flirt with him. He'd passed it off as a joke, and I hadn't thought much about it either, since we're both working, and obviously sometimes our coworkers do hit on us, and it's normal. And also, he'd shown me the flirty text that she'd sent him, so I thought it was all right since he was being transparent about it, so it wasn't anything for me to be worried about. I found it a little weird that this woman was flirting with him despite knowing that he was married, but I couldn't prevent that. I could only count on my husband not to cheat or anything. At the party, I found out that Natalie was also married. She'd been married for a year now, and her husband, Paul, 35, happened to go to the same school as me. We weren't exactly friends, but we did remember each other, and so we decided to talk to each other while our spouses hung out. At around 10 p.m., an hour after we'd reached the party, Paul and I noticed that both our partners were missing. Now, my boss's house was almost a mansion. It was that big, and there were 2 floors and several rooms, so we didn't know where to look for them. Also, the fact that we were just guests and were supposed to limit ourselves to the ground floor didn't help. So, we decided to try calling them. It was kind of uncomfortable for both of us, because I'm guessing even he knew that my husband had a bit of a thing for Natalie. But we didn't address it, because who wants to think about their spouse cheating on them? After a few minutes, when they still didn't answer, we decided to go look for them. By that point, most of the people at the party were very drunk anyway, and were trying to pick a song for karaoke. So we knew that nobody would notice that we were gone. We walked through the entire house but couldn't find them in any of the rooms, and the more we searched, the harder we found it to believe that they were doing anything innocent. Paul and I didn't say a word to each other because of how intensely awkward the situation was, and searched the house in silence. Finally, we managed to find them in the backyard. They were sitting on the grass and looking up at the sky with a bottle of really expensive wine they probably nicked from their boss's kitchen. Paul and I really, truly wanted to believe that things were not what they seemed and they were probably just sitting with each other platonically. But then Natalie turned to my husband and kissed him on the cheek, and that's when any hopes we had were immediately shattered. Thankfully, we didn't make any sound, and we were in such a spot that they couldn't see us either, so after a few minutes of just gaping at them with our mouths open in disbelief, I dragged Paul back into the house so that they wouldn't catch us. I didn't know what to do or what to say, but I just knew that I needed to get the hell away from them, or else I might actually go up to my husband and slap him senseless for what he'd just done. I was dumbstruck for a few moments because my husband was actively cheating on me in the backyard of the house that I was in. He didn't care if he got caught, and neither did Natalie. I could tell that Paul was going through the same thing because he looked pretty angry yet disappointed as well. I felt worse for the poor guy because my marriage had at least fizzled out, but he'd just been married for a year, so it must have been so much worse for him. I couldn't just take this sitting down, and even though I was devastated, my first impulse was to tell everyone. I didn't even care that we didn't know many people there. I just wanted people to know. I waited for a few seconds to formulate something, which was hard given that I was seething inside. But I did come up with a way to get back at this man. I told Paul what I was thinking about, and even though he didn't verbally say anything, he nodded, and that's all the confirmation I needed. So, at 1:45, I went to the living room, and everyone was pretty much soused by then. My husband's boss was also having a gala time, so I didn't hesitate and announced to the room that Paul and I had arranged a very special fireworks display in the backyard to thank the boss for hosting us. There were a lot of drunken cheers and some even clapped, but thankfully the backyard was too far off and the sound wasn't going to carry. I had to request the people to be silent since I couldn't trust a whole drunken lot to not start giggling at any given moment. They didn't even question why exactly they had to be so quiet just for a fireworks display, so that was one advantage of them being drunk. Anyhow, we got to the bay window at the back of the house, which opened up to the backyard, and as soon as it was midnight, we opened up the curtains. Just as we'd expected, my husband and Natalie were still in the backyard and kissed each other at midnight. It was the perfect dramatic reveal to expose our cheating partners, and as soon as they were caught in the act, every single person present there froze. Not just my husband and Natalie, but also the drunk guests. His boss was staring at them, looking as scandalized as he humanly could, and so was the HR head, who was also present at the party. My husband and Natalie looked ready to make a run for it, and after a few seconds of stunned silence, they did hastily get up and rush to get out of the place. Somehow, they didn't even wait for me and Paul because obviously they could see that we knew what they'd done. Within minutes, we heard the sound of cars driving away, and knew that it was them leaving like cowards. After that incident, people started sobering up, my husband's co-workers especially, and his boss announced awkwardly that the party had to end earlier than expected because of whatever just happened. They didn't say anything to us because what could they even say? That we were in the wrong for exposing our cheating partners? I hardly think anyone had the nerve to even come up to us since both Paul and I looked really upset. Despite having been able to successfully catch them in the act and show everyone at the party how disloyal they were, he and I hugged each other goodbye because something like this pretty much bonds you together for life. And we weren't friends, but we certainly were feeling the same kind of pain, and that was something. We headed back to our houses, and I was dreading what was going to happen. Of course, there'd be a confrontation which would lead to a massive fight, but I just wasn't mentally prepared for it. I knew that this was the end of the road for us, and I was going to have to file for divorce soon. But I felt so emotionally drained that I didn't feel like speaking to him or screaming at him for what he'd done to me. I just wanted to get it over with. Luckily, when I came back home, he wasn't there. My husband had probably realized that he was the last person I'd want to see after what happened at the party, and he made himself scarce. I didn't care where he was, so I didn't ask either, and went to sleep peacefully. At least I'd been able to get my revenge, or whatever you want to call it, by giving his CO workers a scandal that they'd definitely be talking about for a year. So I counted that as a win for myself. The next morning, I woke up when my phone started ringing and realized that it was my husband calling. I answered it just out of curiosity, and he put me on blast. He said that both of us were well aware that our marriage was dead, so him looking for love outside of marriage shouldn't have been a big deal at all. So he didn't know why exactly I was so worked up. That was problematic in itself because despite the state of our marriage, I'd never even thought about cheating. He could have just ended things with me and then taken off with whoever he wanted to, and I wouldn't have thought anything of it because it wouldn't have been so wrong. But if I could stay loyal to him despite our loveless marriage, then so could he. What he'd done was unforgivable. You can't have your cake and eat it too. But then he brought up the fact that instead of just confronting him about this later on in person like a normal human being, I went psycho and got his KO workers and even his boss involved. Now he's blaming me for whatever trouble he's about to get into at work since a lot of his boss's business associates were also present at the party. And while this won't directly affect the company, it sure will lead to a lot of gossip and scandal, which isn't good for anyone. He's already received an email summoning him to a meeting with the HR head and his boss, of course, and he thinks I'm the one at fault for this. It's been 2 days, and he's not yet gone back to work since it's the weekend, and he took a day off on the 1st, so I don't know what's going to happen. It's bound to have really bad consequences that I'm sure of, but I don't know how that's my fault. AATA for exposing my husband's affair with his coworker at his boss's New Year's Eve party? Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since New Year's, and my husband has been constantly blaming me for everything that has happened to him after the party. He got fired, obviously. I don't know the exact details, but I don't think anyone was surprised by it, and so was his coworker, Natalie. I've already filed for divorce, and he was served with the papers a few hours ago. We're due to appear in court in the next couple of days, and he's trying as hard as he can to persuade me to stop the proceedings. He hasn't come back home since the party, and I think he's living with his brother since that is what he told me, but I don't think he can be trusted anymore. He might have shacked up with Natalie for all I know. I don't know why exactly he thinks he can convince me to stay after what happened, because it was a horrible experience for me, and I deserve to be with someone better who values me and puts in an effort to be worthy of me. Our marriage has been over for a while now, and we're both aware of it. My husband thinks that we should just continue to stay together and have an open marriage, since a divorce will just lead to unnecessary complications. I think the unnecessary complications are just something that applies to him because I'm perfectly fine with getting a divorce. He's always been bad with money, which is why we've kept our finances separate, and as a working woman myself, I'm sure that given the way he spends his money, he doesn't have a lot saved up and is only so desperate to avoid the divorce because of the whole financial aspect, even more so now that he's out of a job as well. If an open marriage is what he really wanted, then he should have said that before he went ahead and cheated on me with his coworker. The marriage had already been opened up from his end, and he kept me in the dark about it. That's the truth, and now he's trying to save face. Well, that's not happening. Another reason that I'm guessing he's so hell-bent on staying with me, despite not having any love or respect for me, is the fact that he's scared of losing out on money and assets during the divorce, because I'll definitely be taking back whatever I brought to his life. Most importantly, he'll lose the house if I decide to go through with the divorce, since it had been a wedding gift from my parents. And without a job right now, there's nothing he can do except live with his younger brother, who's just pathetic for a man in his late 30s. It's too bad for him, though, because none of this would have been happening if he'd just asked for a clean break from me instead of going behind my back. He's been texting me nonstop after he received the notice and is trying to manipulate me into staying by reminding me of all the good years that we spent together and that this will just be a huge waste of both our time and energy, so we should just stick it out as we have so far. And as if I'll be willing to go back to being trapped in a loveless marriage once more. It's funny how this behavior changed all of a sudden after he received the divorce papers, though. Because before this, he'd just been blaming me outright for being so dramatic and exposing his affair to his boss and coworkers and accusing me of being the reason he got fired. But now he's done a complete 180 and is being extremely level-headed and polite, asking me to rethink my decision for my own sake. I guess the fear of not having a roof over his head is enough to make him turn over a new leaf, because his brother would probably not let him live there for long without rent anyway. That's not my problem now, and I'm glad to be rid of him. Update 2, I just heard from Paul, and he's filed for a divorce from Natalie as well. He also told me that Natalie and my husband have apparently moved in together. One of Paul's and Natalie's mutual friends told him that they've moved into Natalie's parents' house, which is just such a strange living arrangement, but it's their choice, I guess. Natalie is supposedly head over heels in love with my husband and is ready to give up on Paul so that she can be with him. So she's not contesting the divorce either, and has very confidently bragged about how my husband is going to marry her as soon as their respective divorces come through. I was really shocked when I learned about this particular piece of information, because just a few minutes before my phone call with Paul, I'd received yet another text from my husband begging me to reconsider the divorce and stay with him just to avoid the divorce because it's so unnecessary. And if I'm not wrong, the law doesn't permit him to remain married to me while getting married to Natalie, so I'm pretty sure that he's lying to that idiotic woman just so that he has a place to live in for now. His of a brother probably refused to take him in, and that's why he's trying to play both me and his girlfriend like a fiddle. Well, too bad Natalie might be a fool who's too naive to see him for what he truly is, but I'm not. I filled Paul in about what my husband has been telling me, and he agrees with my theory, and I'm not going to let him get away with this. I've asked for Natalie's phone number and address from Paul, and she'll definitely be learning about what her lovely future husband has been planning behind her back. Update 3. It's been a day since the last update, and this evening, I visited my dear friend Natalie's house. Her parents' house, technically, but whatever. I made sure that I went at a time that I knew my husband wouldn't be there, and I know that every single day, my husband goes out for a walk at 6 in the evening without fail. He'd do that while we were on vacation as well, without fail, so I knew that he'd be out at 6, and I was right. Natalie wasn't happy to see me at all, no surprise there, and even told me that my husband wasn't home and she didn't want to speak to me at all, so I could save my breath and just turn back around. But then I told her that it would be her loss if she didn't hear me out. That seemed to interest her, and she invited me in, still looking mad, but I didn't care about that. Once I was inside, I wasted no time in telling her all about what my husband had been doing behind her back, and even showed her all the texts that he'd been sending me, trying to make me stay with him. She was pretty heartbroken, and even refused to believe that I was telling her the truth for the first few seconds, and I did feel sort of sorry for the poor woman because, unlike my husband, she seemed to actually have genuine feelings for him. She started sobbing as soon as she realized that the messages weren't fake, and it was hard to watch. I didn't relish the experience as much as I thought I would, but at least I did my part and let her know the truth. My husband is an incredibly selfish man who cannot think about anyone except himself, and it was important for her to know that. She was sobbing so loudly that even her parents had to come to the room to console her, and I had to explain to them the reason why. It was pretty awkward because, obviously, this isn't the kind of conversation you want to have with someone's parents, no matter what they've done to you. As soon as I finished, Natalie's dad got up, and he looked like he was going to punch my husband when he saw him. He told Natalie politely but firmly that he'd be kicking my husband out of the house as soon as he came back from his walk. He'd never liked the guy, apparently, and could tell from the very first second that there was something off about him. He'd forgiven Natalie for cheating on Paul, but he wasn't going to tolerate this, and I think that was a good move as a father. He thanked me for being honest, even though I had no reason to, and could have just said nothing and watched the drama unfold. After that, I left, and even though I feel a little bad for Natalie, I can't wait to find out what's going to happen to my husband. I still can't believe that he'd really thought he could play me and his girlfriend just to get what he wanted. It's pretty dangerous to be a stupid, selfish a-hole and still believe that you're a genius. My husband's living proof of that. Update 4. Hey guys, I think it's been almost 2 weeks since I visited Natalie and told her all about my husband's timing, and well, Natalie's father had the good sense to kick my husband out the very same day that I dropped by and filled him in on what he was up to. So he's basically kind of homeless right now, and has been relying on his friends to let him sleep on their couches. I know this because he sent me a long rant about how I'd ruined his life, and that he hopes I can live with myself now after effectively turning his life into something straight out of his worst nightmares. I checked, and as it turns out, I'm totally fine with this. He has no job, no house, and worst of all, no girlfriend or wife to bail him out either. He's also going through a divorce, but I don't even know how he's going to be able to afford a decent lawyer for himself now that he's out of options. So I'm guessing I have the settlement in the bag right now. My friends and family are really happy that I did what I did because, honestly, this was all a long time coming. I regret the fact that I didn't do this earlier and leave him the first time I felt like I was losing feelings for him. I don't have any regrets about anything at all. I gave this marriage my all until I just couldn't, and I'm at peace with everything now. He's the one who cheated, and he's the one who's lost everything now, so that's just karma. I'm just going to live for myself now and do what I want. Life's going to be good for me now. I'll make sure of it.